Hello.
Hello, Janice. Hello again.
How are you?
I am good, thank you.
Jolly good. Well, should we kick on or get on?
Yeah, I'm ready.
All right. Well, you know, for me, it's always a pleasure to have this gentleman on my show, one of my favourite people in the music industry. He is James Dean Bradfield. We just listened to That's No Way to Tell a Lie, which is from the Great Western that came out in 2006. And now he has a blistering album out called Even in Exile, first studio album since then. Welcome, James Dean Bradfield. How are you?
Oh, I'm great, thank you. Thanks for having us on, Janice. Thank you.
You're welcome. How's your beard?
My beard is awful. It's kind of... I looked in the mirror around about, oh God, it must have been 8 weeks ago. And I just looked one day and I just thought, what's the point anymore? And I just gave up. And for me, having a beard was not a point of fashion. It was just me giving up visually.
Yes, yeah. Well, I did the same with my fringe, and when it got down to my chin last week, I got my mate over and said, wear a mask, I'll wear a mask, and stand at a distance and just try and clip it. The result is it's far too short. I look like Richard III.
Was it like, I imagine it to be like Tom's, kind of, a Tom from the Thompson twins, like his fringe.
I haven't seen his fringe of late. Do you know what? When I get an album and I know somebody's coming on, I always put stars next to all of the tracks. So I know which ones, you know, I like and which ones I can talk about. This album, I've got stars next to every track.
Oh, so that's not a 4 out of 8, that's a 5 out of 5. That's not a 4 out of 5, it's a 5 out of 5. Oh, yes.
10 out of 10.
my first. I mean, kind of, it has been I had some time to do this record. There was no rush to do it, and so perhaps that's why it feels like an evenly weighted record, I'd diplomatically say. But kind of there was no deadline, and I got it finished just before lockdown. So I've been kind of lucky with the serendipity of this record, I think.
Well, it is amazing, and you're just getting better and better as a guitarist.
I think I'm learning how to play a bit less. I'm learning not to indulge in too much guitar onanism is the very polite word. Kind of like, to be honest, I think I can digest a lot of my influences from since I've been listening to music since I was 10 years old, and I finally learnt how to use my influences that I've been hearing all my life. I think that's helped a lot, I think.
Well, I think it's interesting because you've got certain influences that I can hear. There's a bit of prog. There are wonderful strings going on. There's a bit of the cult, which I know you always liked. And I can hear these influences emerging.
Yeah, I mean, it's really strange for me to talk about this because I can hear them myself, which is quite strange. So if I can hear them, other people can, surely. You know, there's obviously quite a bit of Johnny Marr in The Boy from the Plantation.
Yes.
There's a lot of Alex Lifeson from Rush in the Sick in the Room with Three Windows. And there's a lot of John Cale in something like, 30,000 milk bottles. And there is quite a lot of prog in there. I was always quite a big fan of an old Welsh prog band called Man, and that's come through now as well. So it's all coming to the surface in quite a natural way now, and I hope it doesn't seem like a looking glass record where you can see any different type of influence on any given track. I hope it's not like that. I hope I've digested them in a way that becomes my own.
Oh, definitely. But we all have influences, and they're somewhere in the brain. They're going to emerge, aren't they?
They did, yeah. I mean, when I was writing The Boy from Plantation, I was the music for it. I finished it and I was like, oh God. So it reminded me of a tiny bit of the feel of when Johnny Marr played with Matt Johnson in The.
Oh yes,
round about Mind Bomb time, which I loved that record. I absolutely loved that record.
Yeah, it was brilliant.
And I thought, do you know what? I'm just going to make peace with this. I'm not going to let it worry me at all. You know, I'm just going to make peace with it, and if it's some kind of like a tribute in my head, that's fine. And then, of course, you said you'd heard a bit of Cult in one track, and I kind of heard that a bit as well. And then a week later, I was playing a festival, and the first time I'd met Ian Astbury from the Cult, the Cult were playing on the same bill. And I was thinking, wow, what am I doing here talking to Ian Astbury? So I started asking him about kind of lots of old cult songs, and from the sudden death cult to the death cult to the cult, and I could see his eyes glazing over. He was like, "Oh my God, this is a proper Superboy fan kind of thing." And he just took a phone call and he went, "Sorry, James, I've got to go. There's a problem with my boiler back home." It's just like, I was like, that's either the most surreal thing ever, or it's the most perfect exit strategy I've ever seen.
You'd have been better talking to Billy Duffy.
Perhaps.
So Victor Jara, I really want to talk about him because how did you come across him?
I can precisely say that the first time I heard his name was in 1985 when I was trying to digest Sandinista by The Clash, the album. There was a song in there called Washington Bullets. And already I'd got used to trying to find out who these people were in songs. So like with The Clash, I remember there was a song called Spanish Bombs, and there was a name called Lorca in the lyrics, so I had to find out who he was, and of course he was a Spanish playwright. And then, the next album I listened to, and you're hearing names, and one of them was Victor Jara. And this is all pre-internet, so you either had to ask your mum or dad, and if they didn't know, you went to the library, and you started consulting encyclopedias. Eventually found out who Victor Jara was, along with a host of other names from lots of other songs. And then he got mentioned in a Working Week song about a month later after that, I think. Then, there was so many. They had Simple Minds dedicated their album Street Fighting Years to him. U2 wrote One Tree Hill about it, or he was mentioned in a song called One Tree Hill. And then I found out there was a Christy Moore song about him, a David Ewan song. He was mentioned in an interview about the film Missing. In other words, his name just kept cropping up all the time. Calexico, and before you know it, you've been hearing his name all your life, but other musicians have been using his name as an inspiration, or they've been making up quotes about him, or just talking about him. And that was the great thing about music in the 80s. You would regularly be informed and educated by other people's music and lyrics, and you'd have to go and find out the person behind the name. And that's what happened with Victor Jara. He was always mentioned in other people's work, always.
And for people who don't know, he's a poet, singer, activist from Chile, and sounds like a very gentle man.
Of course. I mean, he's when you see pictures of him, he looks rather sainted. I'm not saying he's a saint, because that's always a terrible thing to put on anybody, but kind of like he has got an aura about him, and the way he sings has an air of inclusion about it, of empathy, of entreaty. He's a protest singer, but it's not the kind of protest singer that you usually listen to. It's not that confrontational. When he sings about Chile and his ambitions for Chile as a land, as a country, it's done in a spirit of empathy and inclusiveness and almost plea. Sometimes his songs are like praise to peace or praise to inclusion. And I think his voice is very much more feminine than what people would expect. He listened to his mother play guitar and sing. He learned on her guitar. Somebody called Violeta Parra, who was a legendary figure in Chilean culture and music. She was a massive influence on him. And I think you can hear that in his singing style. I think women musicians kind of influence his music more than men, definitely.
You mentioned Christy Moore, because he's somebody else who's always been very gentle in the way he protests. I adore Christy Moore. Yeah,
he does, yeah. I mean, kind of, he always seems to find one kernel of truth in the lyric, and then he just focuses on it, and he extrapolates on it, and he describes it. And he doesn't take such an oppositional stance in his songs sometimes, I don't think. It's not about trying to bat you over the head at all. It's about trying to make you understand, I suppose. But I think with Victor Jara, he went even further. He tried to kind of send his message to you on a floating raft. There's something about it which is so gentle, but so powerful still. It's still powerful.
Well, you do a version of his La Partida, which comes from El Derecho de Vivir en Paz, which means we all have the right to live in peace. But you make a really interesting sound with it, very Western, Ennio Morricone. It's epic. I kind of go with my instincts more than anything. I never try to overanalyze anything in the studio, or in life, to be honest. I tried to cover a couple of his songs in the studio,
and I tried to sing the English translations of some of his words, and it just didn't work. There was something in my voice that couldn't convey his conviction and his tenderness as well. I just couldn't do it, which is quite depressing for me, because there's a beautiful version of one of his songs called Manifesto, and Bruce Springsteen does a cover of it in Santiago, and of course, the boss just nails it, kind of like that. But I couldn't do it. So I wanted to include some of his music on my album. So I decided to tackle one of his instrumentals, one of his records that were a bit more impressionistic, so I'd have freedom to reinterpret it. And I thought, what's the point in trying to make myself the musician I'm not? I've read reviews of myself where they say burly Bradfield bellowed his way through the set. So I thought, well, okay, if you're going to accuse me of being emotionally incontinent as a musician, that's the way I'll go with it then. So whereas Victor Hara has power in his tenderness, I just went for it. I'm a bit more physically engaged when it comes to singing to the rafters, and so there's lots of my backing vocals on there. And there's a bit of footage of Victor Hara in the Atacama Desert in Chile, and it's just a lovely bit of grainy footage where he's got his poncho on and he's just spinning around, and he looks just enwrapped with some kind of joy. And I just had this image of him that I'd seen in the Atacama Desert, so I wanted to match it with the music from La Partida. I wanted to create that wide open vista of kind of eeriness but also hope kind of thing.
Well, I think I want that at my funeral. It's so good. Your version.
Please, no, come on, let's be positive.
But you're not scared of doing a bit of Spanish, are you?
Please, I'm not going to be confronted by you telling me to speak some Spanish on the radio.
No, I'm not going to ask you, but you're not scared of including a bit of Spanish?
Well, perhaps that's the influence from The Clash again a tiny bit, I mentioned that song again, Spanish Bombs. There's lots of Spanish in that. There's lots of Spanish in Should I Stay or Should I Go, I suppose. But the more I get older, the more I realise that God, the 80s, it's really strange that sometimes somebody will say the 80s and they'll say it with a sneer. But God, that decade had so much influence over me, musically more than anything. So much good music from that decade. It gets sold short. It really does.
Not all of it, but I know the stuff that you like and the stuff that I like, we think it's fantastic. And it was so influential. And do you think anything like Red Wedge made a difference? Can songs make a political difference?
It's really strange, because I remember being really excited by Red Wedge. I remember, especially because the Redskins had just brought out a single, Kick Over the Statues and stuff, and I loved that song. And, obviously Billy Bragg was on that tour, Paul Weller in the prime of his Style Council years was on that tour, the Common Arts. It was a great tour, the Faith Brothers, all bands like that. God, I'm dragging some names out the drawer there, aren't I? And
they're all good.
They're all good, all good. And I remember trying to get a ticket for the one gig, I think it was either in Cardiff University or St David's Hall, and I couldn't get a ticket. But cut to today, and cut to the band I've been in for so long. We've never ever told anybody to vote for anybody. We went the opposite direction. We always put our stuff in songs, but we never felt right about telling people who to vote for. In fact, I don't think we've ever done it, ever. But I was really engaged with Red Wedge. I really enjoyed it. But we went the other way. We put it in our songs rather than stood on a platform with anybody.
Well, we're delighted that you've recorded 2 songs from us, and the first that we're going to play, which is about Victor, and this is The Boy from the Plantation.
You were gonna shine as your hand held so tightly. Forever I thought onto mine. When you'd cry, I'd wrap you in a blanket and sing you my songs. All I knew to right the wrongs as we held on to love. We held on to love. Victor leading on your tongue. Rivers are first trying to run. There he trying to run. Victor Lydia Martinez. A boy from the plantation they could not repress. Who strummed and sung to dreams and injustice. Victor Lydia Martinez. Victor Lydia Martinez. A boy from the plantation they could not repress. Ah, who strummed and sung to dreams and injustice. Victor Lydia Martinez.
James Dean Bradfield and the boy from the Plantation, and thank you so much, James, for that. Now, Patrick Jones, who was really influential, Nicky's brother, has played a huge part in what you've done.
Patrick Jones, it's really strange, you know, he's Nicky Wire's older brother. I've known, Nicky since I was... Well, I think the first time I was in a class with Nick, I was 4.5 years old. Miss Elizabeth's class in Poddenfraith, infant school. And then, you become aware of your friends have brothers and sisters, and then I slowly became aware of Patrick, when it got to my teens. And he was always that kind of one of the cooler older brothers. He'd been to see Whitesnake like 5 times. He'd been to see Rush. He'd been to Donington and all those kinds of things. And he played football and everything. And then he went off to America as part of his university course. And then he came back. I remember we was in Ernie the Barber's in Pontefraith, which I showed to you when we did our piece a couple of years back, Janice, kind of thing. Anyway, we bumped into each other in Ernie's the Barber's, and we started talking to each other. And I remember he started telling me about Jack Kerouac, Gregory Corso, Lawrence Ferlinghetti, Allen Ginsberg. He came back with all this Beat Generation literature. And he became this kind of like older, more travelled, influential figure in our lives. I remember, he gave me my first copy of Jack Kerouac's Lonesome Traveller, which is still a really important moment in my life, reading that book in the park on my own, thinking I was discovering a whole new world when a million other people had read it before me. And he became really influential, always feeding me books, and I've stayed in contact with him, obviously, because he's Nick's older brother. And I see him once... in certain parts of the year, I see him once a week when I go to see my father up in the valleys, and then I pop in to see him after, and he always gives me a new book, or he shows me a new book of poems or a new play that he's writing. But this one Sunday, he just showed me reams and reams of writing he was doing about Victor Hara. He was writing lots of prose and lots of poetry. And, to be honest, I asked him, why are you doing this? I can't really imagine you're going to get this published. You're just writing a one-man project about Victor Hara. What are you doing? And he was kind of doing it as an emotional exercise. I think he was going through a tough time with his mother passing away and his father being ill, of course, which affected Nicky Wire too, obviously. And he said he was just writing about... He said it felt good to be writing about something that was pure and good. And I was like, well... After a while, I was kind of cynically... I said, do you mind if I kind of steal all this and see if I can put it to music? Which I think kind of shocked him, because he never really intended any of it to be for public consumption. And I was at a loose end because the Manics had said they were taking a break. And in my head, subconsciously, I was looking for a project to do. And he allowed me to. And that's it. It just happened. We were talking about Victor Hara, and at that point, I'd only ever heard two of Victor Hara's songs. but I knew his entire story. I'd read lots about him. I knew in how high esteem he was held in across the Spanish-speaking world and in socialist circles. And then, of course, 3 years ago, we took him for, we're in the digital years. I tracked down all his music and listened to it and went so deep into it with Patrick, and it was just a brilliant experience.
It must have been, and it's lovely to learn all of the time and feel stretched, isn't it, to find out new information.
It is, yeah, and it feels nice that all those people, whether it be, like I said, Working Week, whether it be Clash, Calexico, Chrissy Maud, David Ewan, U2, Simple Minds. It's nice that them educating all the people that never heard of Victor Hara before comes to fruition somehow, it's a nice line that connects and comes full circle. And I like that, because I still persist that, the music press and just bands in the 80s and 90s, obviously, the way that they included things in their songs was a really good way of just being taught about things sometimes.
And Patrick Jones, he went on to, didn't he form the Young Writers Group in Blackwood Miners Club, which you sold out many years ago?
I don't know, actually. I don't know.
Yes,
No, it wasn't.
Did.
Oh, I don't know about that. He's kind of... He's done... No, he's a kind of... He's a one-man walking action group, so kind of like you probably did, yeah. But kind of... It's amazing, kind of, because I've seen run about five of his plays in the theatre. He's had multiple books published, and he's always kind of, he pushed me a bit in terms of just sometimes giving a counter argument. He did inspire the title of our album, Everything Must Go. Yeah. So obviously, there's something in that family, between Nicky Wire and Patrick. This a bloodline there, which is very strong, very forceful, which I've done well out of, obviously.
It was interesting last week because I had a band on from Blackwood called Supermarine. And they're really excited because they're the first band since you sold out the Blackwood Miners Club all of those years ago. Are
they from Blackwood, are they?
Yeah, they are. Yeah.
Well, I can't talk to them because I'm from Pontefract. That's a mile away.
You mentioned before Billy Bragg, and it suddenly sprang to mind thinking about Wilco and all of the stuff they've done, Woody Guthrie stuff. Life continues after death in the creative world, isn't it?
Well, it's really interesting you bring that up because, yeah, it was a touchstone for me. Of course, they're different records because Wilco and Billy Bragg on Mermaid Avenue were using Woody Guthrie's words, and they were setting them to music. And, of course, I was taking Patrick's words. They're not Victor Hara's words. But you're right, it's really good that you bring that up. It was one of my early touchstones where I was thinking, right, How do you approach this? Have you got to try and sound like Victor Hara? So let's listen to kind of your Wilco and Billy Bragg's album and see if they try to sound like Woody Guthrie. And even though it's the music is stuck in Midwest roots Americana, they don't really sound like Woody Guthrie. They don't. I don't think they just did it in the right spirit, and that freed me up listening to that record. I thought, yeah, they just approached it with the right spirit, and they hoped and trusted that spirit would make a good record. So yeah, it was an important touchstone for me.
But also, it does make people research Woody Guthrie, delve into his music and go, oh my goodness, I'd never have heard this if it wasn't for them.
It's really strange, that famous picture of Woody Guthrie that you always see, this guitar kind of kills fascists. Yeah. And his hair was just a little quiff. I always thought that Joe Strummer built his entire career on that one photograph, because obviously he had the same thing on that guitar at some point, and he had the same hairdo, the same look. I've always thought that, perhaps I'm just reinterpreting things, too much. But it is true.
Possibly not.
Possibly not. but pictures, they can influence you, words, songs, everything, they can influence you. It's massive. And you do go on a voyage of discovery. You do.
Well, it's like, as you said before, you were listening to the stuff in the 80s, and you can't forget that era now, can you? Because it was such an influence to you, or on you.
It was, yeah. I mean, like, at face value, we're talking about a song by The Clash, Washington Bullets, Simple Minds, kind of dedicating street fighting years, and I went out and found out more about Victor Hara. That's the first time I went out and found one of his songs. And then kind of I'll go to something like I mentioned you before, Matt Johnson from The. You know, I remember in one interview he was reading a copy of Nausea by Jean-Paul Sartre. I went out and bought a copy of Nausea by Jean-Paul Sartre. You know, there are so many things that from music, you know, literary influences. McCarthy were the same. A group from like the late 80s, real proper indie heroes of ours. They had a song called Franz Hal. We went out and found out about the paintings of Franz Hal. It was amazing. It's really good. It's just like, it's almost like music was like a congressional library in the 80s.
So did you research the Spanish Civil War?
Well, that's next lyric, you know. I mean, for me, I've always just found out about stuff. For me, everything's always been like a foundation course. I've always been playing catch-up with Patrick and Nicky and Richey kind of thing. But kind of, I just loved finding out about what the songs were about. It was as simple as that. And so when it came to, tackling Victor Jara and his upbringing in Chile, I already had a lot of what you would call sense memory about it. I remember my mother really cursing the name Pinochet when it came up in a news story run about the Falklands War, and she said, you know, I remember my mother saying, of course, Pinochet, the perfect bedfellow for Thatcher. You know, I remember her being so disgusted. I don't want to get too political.
Was it the telly?
No, my father did now and again. By accident, Dad, don't worry, it's okay. Kind of like not good in the age of COVID, that is it. But kind of, I remember, and also so Pinochet became a name that we knew in the house because of the Falklands War and because of Britain using air bases in Chile during the Falklands War. And that's when my mother started talking about it a bit. And then I remember seeing the film Missing, with Jack Lemmon and Sissy Spacek in, which of course is all about the post-Pinochet coup. And then I became aware of this diaspora of like Chileans that had moved to Swansea. I think because copper mining was so such a big industry in Chile, that kind of lots of Chileans moved to kind of this part of Wales, especially down in that area because of copper mining and because of their skills in the smelting process and the whole industry surrounding it. So you became aware of it. And I loved the Chilean football kit in the 80s. You know, there were so many things that just floating around in my head. And so kind of, it's really strange. It kind of, making this record just made little bits of memories all just come back, definitely.
Does your brain ever rest?
Oh, God, yeah, absolutely. Oh, I have a really amazing ability to fall asleep on the spot. It annoys the hell out of everybody who knows me. Nicky hates it. I fall asleep before the plane takes off. My wife hates it. I can fall asleep in the middle of any film that I'm loving and really enjoying. Kind of like, oh, absolutely. Oh, I love trash TV. Absolutely.
I do. And particularly during lockdown. I've watched loads of it.
Oh, yeah.
Are you still running up that hill and down the hill?
The Kendon Hill? No.
No?
Because I'm Cardiff now, you know. So I'd have to make a special effort to go and run up and down that hill.
Yes, of course.
I would, yeah. But I've been in lockdown, the Rocky factor's been coming back during lockdown, definitely. I've been exercising, trying to stave off. Like I said at the start of this interview, I looked in the mirror at the start of lockdown and I thought, what is the point anymore? So I tried to do something about it. I thought, all right, I'll try and work on my body, but I'll cover my face up with a beard. That's what I'll do. Good plan.
Now, we know there's a new Manics album on the way.
Yes. We just started doing demos for the Manics new Manics record.
Yeah.
We don't know where it is yet, but it's lovely. It's lovely to be back in the saddle of just getting those envelopes off Nick. And there's always a bit of collage on the envelope, you know, to give you a clue about something in the lyric. And he's just given me two bangers, actually, two great lyrics, two amazing titles. And he gave me a set of lyrics before that, where probably one of the most, I don't know why I'd say it was quintessentially Manics, but one of the most quintessentially Manics choruses of all time, lyrically. He's just given me one and it's so apocalyptic, but so joyous in some kind of way. So, yeah, this I can tell you, joyous and apocalyptic.
I can't wait. And what about these gigs for the NHS?
Yeah, hopefully they'll happen, you know. There's no point trying to give any guarantees to anybody at the moment, but the tickets were sold, you know, they sold out an hour because they were free. And, well, the first night was. And of course, we're aiming towards those dates, but if anybody says you can't do those gigs, then of course the promoters got other dates on standby. So they will happen, hook or by crook, they'll happen.
Well, I think everybody wants something to happen for the NHS and the way they've worked during all of this.
Absolutely.
Fifth biggest employer in the world, the NHS.
It is. I mean, in this part of Wales, it is the biggest employer, I think.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, kind of, I think that there are other people doing these gigs too. Paul Heaton, you know, kind of like, you know, they've done a gig as well. He put a gig on sale too, and some other people have done the same gig. And I think we're all in the same boat. You know, a lot of us looked at people that worked in the NHS. I've got a lot of some family. Lots of friends, lots of parents of my children's friends, kind of thing, work in the NHS, and you could see the difference on them within a month. You know, these people were run ragged, you know, and it seemed especially unfair because these are people that do a very, very hard job as it is, and then their hard job became more difficult, which seems incredibly unfair. So, whilst that seems like a heavy thing to realise and talk about, we thought, well, what's the lightest way we can deal with this? Put on a concert for free and band speeches, band tears, and just dance and get drunk. Let's just do that kind of thing.
And hand runs and buckets.
Yes, hand runs and buckets, yeah. But like, you know, like I said, it's not going to be a nuanced affair. It's not going to be, we're going to build this, you know, this set's going to build, you know, and build and build. It's going to be like 1, 2, 3, 4, biggest song. Next song, 1, 2, 3, 4, biggest song, you know. So it'll be great. I just want to see people drunk and having a good time. That's all my hope for it is.
And how are Nicky and Sean?
Yeah, they're good, yeah. Sean's birthday today. Sean's birthday. Kind of like...
Happy birthday, Sean.
Happy birthday. I think he went for a walk on a beach somewhere today with his dog.
Lovely.
And I think Nicky did some shopping today. And little do they know that I have a tracker on both of them and exactly what... I know what they're both exactly doing. Yeah, they're great. They're really cool.
So Nicky's in Aldi.
He was in Aldi. I think he was actually probably buying some new records and spillers today. Actually, I think.
Oh, was
or
he?
trying to,
good.
if it was open. Well, okay.
That's important to keep all of these, you know, independent companies going.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, I mean, I can't wait to actually start buying some new records again. Yeah, I heard a record on the radio today, and I thought, right, that's the first record I'm going to buy. You know, next week I'm going to go out and buy that. It was a record by somebody called Salt, and it was called Wildfires. Great song. So that's my next purchase.
And your dad all right?
Yeah. He's a bit nuts, but he's okay. He's talking to the birds quite a lot at work, but that's okay. He's Dr. Doolittle. It's cool.
And tell us about the final track that we're going to play, this lockdown session that you did, from the hands of Violeta.
By birds, I meant robins and starlings, by the way.
I know you did. I didn't think you meant the other connotation.
This next song, Hands of Violeta, yeah, it's primarily about one of the biggest influences of Victor Jara's life, somebody called Violeta Parra, who went into the outer reaches of Chile and saved traditional songs that she knew were going to be lost to the sands of time. She painted, she kind of exhibited in Paris. She took her songs all over the world. She wrote one of the most famous Spanish songs ever, Gracias a la Vida. Kind of like, she was just amazing, and she was a very, very big influence on Victor Jara.
Well, look, James, it's always a pleasure to talk to you. Bring a smile to my face, joy into my life. And the album is amazing, even in exile. So congratulations, and you take care.
Oh, cheers, Janice. Thank you very much.
All right, lots of love.
Take care. Bye-bye.
From the hands of Violeta. Take care. Bye-bye. Bye-bye.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Hiding and witnessing or whispering, oblivion or requiem, rejoice or lament, a folklore symphony, for noddy or eulogy, a missing piece of me that I will never know. It is with you that I'm close. 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 Release us when it's time. In what we lose, we are defined. Gracias a la vida you gave, as brief as a wave, but strong as lungs revived. A chorus of the despised, striking matches in the mind, a choir leading the blind, and forgot a melody, and forgot a melody. I forgot a melody. I forgot a melody.
Wow, James Dean Bradfield from the hands of Violeta. That's the lockdown session version that he did for us, but you will find it on the album, Even in Exile. Not that particular version, obviously. But, Jan, please say hi to James for me. I fixed his toilet flush once. He asked me to do it as quietly as possible because Popmaster was on. That's from LG. And John on Twitter says, brilliant to hear from James Dean Bradfield. I'll be out early in the morning to go and buy Even in Exile. Joyous and apocalyptic. That's a Manics for you, says Heather. And Liz has tweeted saying, yes, Patrick did. That's the Writers Club in Blackwood. And Jem was tuned in London too, a huge Manics fan, but he's always amazing and he's so interesting to talk to. Just a great talker and funny as well. Right, thanks, Jane.